episodes add up fast. We're already on episode 2 of Canada Untold. Our first episode really focused on the town of Cache Creek, and we're going to be featuring on Canada Untold multiple communities across Canada. If you've ever been in, I grew up out in the sticks, so I was coming into town, coming into places like Cache Creek. But if you know anything about a small community, you'll know that the surrounding areas are just as much part of the fiber of those communities and the activities around the little businesses that surround them. And so for this episode, it's still featuring Cache Creek, but we're going to expand out. We have an organization named Gold Country that's going to be talking about some of the businesses that are there. And then we're going to have the TNRD, which is sort of the governing, not sort of, it is the governing body in the surrounding areas. And so we're going to have, from the TNRD, we'll have Stephen Rice, he's the director there, and then Lana Ray Brooks, who is the grant writer at Gold Country. Stephen, Lana Ray, welcome to the show. It's very good to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with Stephen. Can you sort of, I guess let's first paint the picture of the TNRD, sort of the area, even what it is for people that don't know.
Well, local government is funny. The way it's structured is they have municipalities, and in Area I, which I represent, there are 3 municipalities. There's Lytton, Ashcroft, and Cache Creek. Outside those municipal boundaries, we have Area I, and that goes halfway to Kamloops, I always say, halfway to Clinton, halfway to Lillooet, halfway to Boston Bar, and halfway to Merritt. So it's a fairly big geographical area, but as you know, in rural, we don't have a huge population, just over 2,000. So that sort of encapsulates Area I.
Wow. So I mean, again, for people that have never been in that area, that what you just described, though, is a absolutely massive landmass for a governing body to manage.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
so you're talking, sorry, I just wanted to quickly, because I know we're going to get into a little bit of like fires and the floods that have happened over the last couple of years. We're going to talk about lots of positive things as well, but you can't talk about one without the other. So would that be things like the floods, like washouts and that, or in like garbage disposal, all those types of things, or what sort of is encompassed in that?
Yeah, it's waste management. It's from the spectrum of goes to that. We deal with emergencies, fires, flood. Of course, rural healthcare is much different than urban healthcare. There's a lot of rural issues that the province is built on one business model, and unfortunately, it's more of an urban model. So the rural we sort of scratch and claw for everything we get, in my opinion, and that's part of the reason I ran for office, actually. So, the rural model is still a work in progress, in my opinion, and floods and fires, are not the exception. They're the norm. We'll have them every year in our area. Certainly, it's not if we have them; it's the magnitude of them. And of course, as we know, 2021 was I came in '88, and I'm sure long before that, there's never been anything of the magnitude of 2021. It'll go down in history as probably one of the biggest disasters, I would say, in all of Canada. Actually, it's we're 2 years to get to the end of the road, maybe even longer on this disaster. So with the burning down of Lytton and the flooding of Highway 8.
And that's all just the surface stuff, not just the disruption in people's lives and everything like that. And we'll definitely go back to it. Lana Ray, Gold Country, we've talked about some of the businesses that are sort of associated in this area. I have to admit, I thought you'd give me like 2 or 3. Okay, we'd highlight them, and the list just got longer and longer. And it's just, I mean, I'm definitely planning a trip now to all the places I've been missing for the last 30 years. Can you talk a little bit about Gold Country and what their role is in the area?
Well, Gold Country Community Society was established in 1991 to just help generate economic revenue for the communities of the region after the Coquihalla Highway was opened up. It was a huge impact to just the businesses and the communities that follow down from Cache Creek down through the Fraser Canyon. And so Gold Country Community Society was established to help revitalize the communities of the region and generate revenues.
And then what's the sort of the region of, is it similar to the TNRD? Like how far is that reach for Gold Country?
So Gold Country's region reaches from just below Green Lake, the 70-mile house area, all the way south down to this side of Kanakabar. It reaches right through over to Cherry Creek towards Kamloops, including the district of Logan Lake and the district of Lillooet, reaching over to the Seton Lake area.
It's quite a crossover. Steve, I want to jump back over to you because I'm hearing, I know the geography fairly well. So it's like there's these different overlaps. And I guess that's sort of common in the communities where, down the lower mainland, it's like, this is Burnaby, this is New West, you cross the street and you're in another city. But in your areas, it's sort of these different organizations and government bodies, and they're sort of overlapping each other almost.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sort of overlaps about 80%. It does overlap into the Squamish Lillooet Regional District, as Lana Ray said, Lillooet. And but it is interesting. It's almost, if you put the maps on top of one another, they'd be pretty similar with a few jots out here and there and stuff like that. But and rightfully so, because the resources, for Gold Country and on the Gold Country board, we do have some folks from the Squamish Lillooet Regional District also. So that crossover is actually helpful when you're looking for funding in other areas also. So it works pretthis well.
With what's happened in the last, in 2021 with these fires and things, this is a very simplified question of it, but we got to start somewhere. How has the community and the surrounding areas dealt with it? Just even your approach to getting the message out of both rebuilding, but also getting the proper support and what could have been done differently. Stephen, I'm going to start with you from that sort of, I guess, that infrastructure damage side of things. And then Lana Ray, I want to go over to you with sort of attracting people back into those areas. So Stephen, start with you, please.
Yeah, it's when we had the disasters, we lost 87 telephone poles and 14 transformers. What that equates to is we lost all our internet, we lost all our cell coverage, we lost all our landlines. So I was literally driving 36 kilometers a day, 18 there and 18 back to what they call the last spike. It's a pullout, and actually communicating to our community along with our chief Minnie was doing the same and trying to get the message out for months. I mean, this is something unprecedented. That's why I mean the scope of the disaster is unimaginable, really. It's Twilight Zone-ish. So that's just, so you have no communications, and then you have people going to evacuation centers from Lytton and Lower Nicola and Spence's Bridge. Kamloops filled up, Kelowna filled up, Merritt filled up, and they were going all the way to Chilliwack. These people that didn't have homes, they were evacuated. It was an evacuation order. And us folks, our Highway 8 family, as I call them, we were evacuated on June 30, be July 1st, the day after. And then we got back home, and then we were evacuated again on November 15th with the flood. So you can imagine, and that was when we lost the 87 poles, was the flood. We only lost, I think, 32 poles during the fire, but we had no communication neither of those times. So that's the magnitude is just, like I said, you'd have to write a Twilight Zone episode to even believe something like this could happen.
Now getting that rebuilt, and Lana Ray, I want to get back over to the second part of that question. But Stephen, to stick with you for a moment, when you're trying to get this rebuilt, you mentioned it's sort of built on an urban model. Again, and I've kind of lived in both worlds, so I understand it's like people talk about in a city, you need to have pretty strict rules, because if you don't, it's just absolute chaos. And I've been to countries around the world where the rules aren't followed that well. And it's not a very functional place all the time. So, but there you have to have adaptability in the areas that you are. And if you're sort of set up for urban, but you're in this area that's sort of been hit by literally fires and flood in the same year, is that a challenge? working?
Yes, it is. But, rural's pretty good at coloring outside the lines. We're the advantage to rural, you can make it a problem, or you can make it, sort of an advantage to some degree, because you can color outside the lines. For instance, your neighbors are the networking within rural communities is incredible. It's much better, I would suggest, than the urban networking, because you're basically right there. You can color outside the lines at community club meetings. You can call. I hate to say you're coloring outside the lines a lot, but you have to in order to adapt to these ever-changing situations. For instance, with the mental health thing. You can imagine the mental health issues when people are evacuated and stuff and don't have a home to go to. They don't know where family members are and stuff like that. We scratched and clawed for 3 months just to get a mental health person, when we're being told you can just go to Kamloops, or you can just go here or there or Kelowna and you get some help. That doesn't happen. We finally got somebody to come to Spence's Bridge, but it wasn't easy. Those are the kind of challenges we face. And but we pretty much feel like we're doing it on our own a lot of the time and stuff like that. And those are the challenges. Not to say we didn't get help, but that localized help is localized networking, and it works very well rurally. And we've been doing it a long time, and we're pretty damn good at it.
Yeah, well, it's just simple things. What came to my mind is during the fires, we were up in Deadmans, and my sister was helping out one of the former chiefs of Sketcheston. She had her trailer there and she was loading up. So we're out there carrying out pigs. And that's the other thing. It's a trip to Kamloops, even if that was a small piece of property. On any given piece of property in a rural area, you might have four to 10 different types of animals there. You can't just throw them in the back of your car and be on your way to Kamloops.
That's right. I mean, we had 5 farm dogs and stuff. And when the floods came, we woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was at the restaurant at 9. I was going to make a trip back for some coffee, and the roads were gone. But we happened to have all 5 dogs out of the farm and all 3 vehicles. Most people did not. Yeah. And there was no way to get back in there. You needed a helicopter ride, and there was no helicopter rides coming for a week or two. So, I mean, that's what happened. It happened that fast.
Yeah, I have to just quickly say I'm glad you're actually gone here talking, because it just, we saw lots of footage, but it's something different about it. Even hearing you sort of say about it, it sort of hits home different. Lana Ray, if you're at an organization that wants to attract people in, and the place is on fire and it's flooding, and that's what gets the news. I mean, obviously there's stories, there's what's the thing, if a dog bites a man, there's no story. If a man bites a dog, you got a story, that kind of thing. And it is when the fires go up and the floods happen, then that comes on the news. You as an organization, there's all these beautiful things to do in your community. How are you sort of adapting and approaching and sort of letting people know it's time to come back, and there's plenty to come back to?
Well, recently we did a very large Shop Local campaign in the region that was grant funded by the provincial and federal government, and the BC Chamber of Commerce actually also. And so with that funding, we generated just a beautiful campaign on shopping local to help our region, specifically region to region, right? So Lillooet to Clinton to Cache Creek to Spence's Bridge and Ashcroft, Savannah, and just getting our residents looking at supporting each other as best as they can, but also utilizing that campaign to tell the world that we're still open for business. There's a lot of beautiful things out here, a lot of wonderful shops and people, and we encourage people to come out and explore with us. Come check out our region and just see all the fantastic sights and sounds that there are to be had.
Well, I mean, there's a few things that I didn't even, and I'm sort of embarrassed, to be honest. Like, and I want to name a few of them, like the Echo Valley Spa. Where is that located? The Echo Valley Spa.
Echo Valley Spa and Ranch is located out the backside of Jesmond Creek, out the Clinton area, also part of the Gold Country region. So they are quite a ways out, but are beautiful, beautiful location. A lot of history there for the province, ranchers as well. So, and just a great place to go and get away from it all, especially if you're coming from that urban location and looking for like a rural luxury. I would say that the Echo Valley Spawn Ranch would be a wonderful getaway.
Is there a lot of things like biking trails and like I know geocaching, I think that's still quite popular with some people. Are there a lot of that type of thing that just sort of go by yourself, or guided tours and things like that?
Um, Currently, right now, I believe that there are some guided tours in the region. Some of them might be produced by things like the Tootie Gravel Inn in Clinton. Kelly Servinsky is doing mountain biking and promoting mountain biking for North America in the Clinton region, where they're mountain biking the old Gold Rush Trail, and it's quite exciting. He also has a bed and breakfast there, so you can book and go for that tour. There are many other tours. Hoiston is having tours, but I believe that they haven't started opening up yet. So we're actually meeting with them, I believe, on Monday to just discuss how they're moving forward with their economic development and tourism this year, and how Gold Country can possibly assist them with their advertising and supports.
Then there's I guess there's also what, Kumshin River rafting in Lytton. So I guess that's close to your area, Stephen. Is that still open with all the fires and everything that happened? Is that still an operation?
Yep, they're still around. They just missed the fire, right on the cusp of the fire. So they did lose one full building of rafts, which is tens of thousands of dollars, but they did get through the fire, and we're resilient. I like to think of rural resiliency and stuff like that. So they're not only active and got their business back open because of everybody who really doesn't have a place to go. We're sort of locked in here a little bit and stuff. For a while we were literally locked in because all the roads were closed. So they've, to their credit, they've opened up their restaurant so people can go down there and have a nice night out for dinner and stuff like that. Typically would not be open this time of year, and they're getting ready for their season. And so once again, you know, Bernie came in 30-40 years ago, and we have the Fandrich family down there doing their thing, and it's just a wonderful operation. They got frisbee golf, they got the teepees down there, they got some lodging down there, and just a really wonderful facility. And you get to choose whether you want a motor raft or a paddle raft. I prefer the paddle raft. It's a little more of an adventure, but that Thompson River from Spence's Bridge to Lillooet is a hell of a raft ride.
I bet. I've seen it. I've never been in it. Yeah, and that's such an important reason why we're doing this show, is just for those. I mean, I honestly did not know about them. So I mean, I'll be there. If nothing else, you've got me coming there with my wife, and I will be there. So also the call, Lana, I want to talk a little bit about the cultural. There's a very long history. I've interviewed Chief Frank Antoine many times, and I'm honored to call him a friend for years. And there's this Indigenous culture, there's the ranching culture. Can you talk? There's a lot of people, there's a very big demand, especially in places like Vancouver or back east, people that want to come to BC just to see it. They want that cultural side of things. Can you talk a little bit about what's available in your area?
So currently we have a lot of things that are moving forward. So we have the Maccabee Fossil Beds that is going to be run by Frank Antoine's band, Bonaparte First Nations. I am under the impression that Skeecheson Indian Band is also in the process of opening up a museum, but my understanding is it will be a year from the time that it is actually commencing its project work. So they have not begun that project yet. And once again, so just speaking to the Lillooet Nations, there is some amazing opportunities out there to go and learn how to do dried fish and spun, and to actually have a wonderful salmon dinner afterward, going to learn how to do that. So there are a lot of opportunities that are starting to get generated in our region because we're so rich with this intangible heritage, and it's time for us to start capturing it before it's lost. And you can see that our First Nations communities in the region, and we have 20 of them just in the Gold Country region alone,
Wow.
are working very hard at getting their Indigenous tourism sector off the ground to cater to the interests of the world right now.
Yeah, no, there's a huge, and I know some of the people that are involved in it, and they've going in a different place in the world and sort of connecting those Indigenous tourism initiatives together. And it's just, it's only at the very, very start. And then what about like, there's some other, the cultural stuff, like, which one is it? I was looking at it. There's a couple ranches and things like that out there as well, right? Like Cache Creek Ranch, that's one of them.
Cache Creek Ranch is definitely one of them. So they have a lot of colonial type buildings and history there. And currently, right now, the Bonaparte Indigenous group is working at bringing more Indigenous culture to the Bonaparte and the Hat Creek Ranch. So that is going to be exciting to see what new opportunities they are offering in the coming season.
Stephen, over you're a farmer, and do you have, you're wearing a t-shirt. What is that t-shirt you've got on?
That's my Desert Days t-shirt. About 12 years ago, I went to a community club meeting and said we need to marry agriculture, farming, and music. And 12 years later, here we're having we've had to skip it for a couple of years, but we're able to have it live now. And so we're sort of excited. All the musicians are signed up. And second week of September, anybody out there who wants a great outdoor family music festival with incredible music, food, beer garden, vendors, the whole 9 yards, come to Spence's Bridge, because it's also cheap. So I'm not sure what the cost is going to be, but it's a great festival. And if you don't mind me expanding on the Hat Creek Ranch, I was at a Hat Creek Ranch board meeting. I'm on that board, and the Indigenous site we are moving, and it's going to be wonderful, spectacular, remarkable. Use all those adjectives you want. Now we're moving it. This is a 2-year process, but what's going on at Hat Creek is really going to unfold, and it's going to be a marvel for our highway. And so I'm very excited about what's going on there.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. I think people love food, and so we've got to touch on food in a sec. But Stephen, I want to stick with you, and I want to shift gears a little bit before we jump into the food part, because there's some great places to go to in your area. I wanted to go back at just the rebuilding process that you're going through, and talking about that sort of being outside the line, coloring outside the lines. But just, can you give us a snapshot of what it's now taking to rebuild? Because I know the TNRD is not technically rebuilding Lytton, that's not, you're outside the actual towns, right? Can you just try to give us some sense of what that is and what it takes?
Yeah, well, imagine, if you will, you go into 2021 and you're saying, okay, getting into the summer season. We open our fruit stand July 1st, and then on July 30th, a wildfire burns a town down in less than half an hour, basically, and people are scrambling and going all over hell and gone, and nobody can even imagine, where to go from there. And then the flood of November 15th, and people are scrambling from there. And then the rebuild, the province has never had to answer questions. The federal government has never had to answer questions quite like they have with Lytton and the flooding, I would suggest. And so when you put questions that they've never had to answer, most of the time they don't have an answer. So that's sort of where we were at the beginning. And now you look at we're talking 8 months later for the fire, and 5 months later for the flood. And we got a long ways to go. Neither one, if you were writing a 30 chapter book, I think we were on maybe chapter 2 or 3. There's a long way to go. I think because time passes, maybe you get a little numb to this, but if you're actually an evacuee or part of not being home, I guess is a better way to put it, and don't have a timeline when you can go home, that's when the mental health thing kicks in. So it's a big picture. It's hard to paint the picture. I had a couple of ministers actually standing in my driveway and telling them, you see that little piece of grass over there? If my grandkids step on that, they fall into the river. That's what it is. There's nothing under that grass. The river's eating away the land underneath the grass, and that's just not our farm. That's all the way down Highway 8. And we're probably better off than Lytton. They've got to, completely rebuild their entire community. So it's just beyond the pale. It's beyond your imagination.
Is there that challenge going back to sort of that setup for urban, like when you're trying to restructure a river so it doesn't, continue to flood over again, and you want to get some, you want to get some river from over here to over here, but all that kind of stuff. Is that a challenge or
huge? You've nailed it with the riprap. The workers are there. I counted 5 excavators standing on my farm the other day from my farm, and that's not all the excavators on Highway. That's just from my farm. The biggest slowdown right now on Highway 8, I can't really speak to Lytton as much, but to Highway 8 is supply chain. They not only can't get enough riprap, they can't get enough other materials that they need to rebuild. Say they had to rebuild 3 bridges. They got slowed down there. The supply chain issues are really sort of elevating the time frame, or extending the time frame, I should say, because the massive amount, they literally had to put the road back. The geotechs are all out there. The crews fly in on helicopters because there's no road to go where they're working. It's like a war zone. Helicopters going back and forth all day long until they knock off at 5 or 6 o'clock. So you can imagine the scope of the work being done here, but they do get slowed up sometimes with supply chain issues. It's just incredible. And then Lytton, we're just, you have to go through everything before you can even remove the debris. And that took a long time. And they're just now getting the debris removed, and it's not even all done there. So, there's a long ways to go for us folks. We're in this little circle of disaster that's never been visited before and stuff. And so it's a tough road to sled.
Well, I have to say, and part of it is that, I've interviewed now you're my 3rd and 4th interview today. And just the engagement, the level of people wanting to rebuild, they want the community to come to thrive. People like Santos saying, we want people, we don't want to stay at 900 people right in this little community. We want people to grow and come here and be part of the community. And that's just saying it and letting people know you want it. Now people can pay attention. The food is such an important part. It's kind of woven into everything 3 times a day. Lana Ray, and Stephen, feel free to jump in too. But Lana Ray, let's start with you. What are some places people need to see? I've eaten at some of them. I haven't at others. Can you name a few?
Desert Hills for sure. Amazing tacos. Also, Horsings Farm. There's some other really great fruit stands along the way.
I'll jump in with the packing house in Spence's Bridge.
I was just about to start with Spence's Bridge, but I was going to start with your brother's place first. So there's some beautiful produce that can be picked up at Hilltop Gardens. And while you're on your way down there, stop in and have a beautiful lunch at the packing house in Spence's Bridge. So there's a...
Who is it? That's not Steve. The packing house isn't Stephen's place, is it?
Oh, it is. It's Stephen and Paulette's.
Oh, got you. Okay.
But Hilltop Gardens is his brother's place.
Yeah, I like to call it Paulette's place, though, just so you know. Because
sorry, you cut out a little bit, Steve. You like to call it what? Sorry.
Paulette's place. My wife does all the heavy lifting. I get all the credit, and she does all the heavy lifting. It isn't right.
Oh, fair enough. I won't speak to that. I'll just continue on my way.
Okay.
I do believe you, though. I do believe.
Okay. It's so true.
Okay. Before we wrap up the interview, I think anybody watching is starting to get a picture of actually how many things you can do and how much, and how many different experiences you can have. But I know that there's more. So, Stephen, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to give you what's one thing that throughout this interview you want to make sure that maybe we missed, that people need to expect when they come, and then Lana Ray will go to you after Stephen.
I'm going to go with unique rural landscape. URL. When you come to Spence's Bridge, you might be greeted by people, but more likely when you're on the highway turning into Spencer's Bridge, you'll be greeted by bighorn sheep. We have probably 200 to 300 that hang around town and stuff like that. We have an eagle and osprey nest on the power pole right across from the river, and a scope that you can look into. It's free. We call it the lookout. That's the local name for it. It's a lookout. Cool bench and a scope, and it tells the story of the 3 bridges of Spencer's Bridge. The last one they took down 6 years ago now, and but it has a good story there. So that's a story you can hear. And then the other thing you should do if you come to our area is go down Highway 8, because guess what? The river's moved significantly. It's way different. So the landscape doesn't often change. It's usually static, but with the cases of the fires and floods, we're going to have a very green landscape recovering from the fire. And then we moved just by our farm. The river was moved 100 feet to the south so they could put the road in where the river flooded to. That's a true story. So when you're driving Highway 8, and you won't be able to do it this year, but still worth coming by on Highway 1, but maybe next year, check it out, because it's going to be a different drive.
Great. Lana Ray, maybe a couple of events or something that we didn't touch on to wrap up the interview.
I'd love to talk about our Geo Tour prequel that is going to be initializing on August 5th through August 8th. We are going to be setting out 50 new geocaches in the region of Gold Country to help just get that destination marketing off the ground. It allows people to get out there and see lots of our local area. And we're really excited because we're going to have a new theme this year moving forward with our Geo Tour. We are going to be focusing on Indigenous culture and heritage and just pre-colonial times as best as we can, wanting to support our local region and our Indigenous communities, just bridging the gaps and getting collaboration collectively through the region.
Amazing. And of course, you're both standing in front of the cars. So Graffiti Days will be June 10th, 11th, and 12th of this year. So we want to make sure to check that out. Thank you both for coming. I know you actually drove here to get here and do this interview from this location you're in. And thank you for supporting your communities, both by volunteer work, but also through having businesses and helping the economy keep on going. And hopefully our show can play a small role in putting a few more eyeballs on the community and bringing people. And once they come, I know they'll come back. So thank you both.
And thanks for that.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everybody, for watching Canada Untold. You've seen, if you didn't see the first episode, you'll go to the playlist. It'll be in a link. You'll be able to find the first episode, and there'll be links to some of these businesses and activities that you can do right in the description. So go check them out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please feel free to send us information if there's another community you want us to highlight, because we want to do plenty of them in the next few years. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Canada Untold.